Hello, and welcome to part 2 of the Republic of Tobuck. Now we will clean the house. The time has come to tidy up around the edges and make doubly sure that nothing is compromising leaks out about our little game. It might increase the workload for the state bureaucrats that are trustworthy just a little, but that's a horseshoe that'll simply have to wear. Sometimes a little encouragement is unfortunately necessary. Sell more guns! Sell more guns! Sell more guns! Come on, just sell more guns. Sell gun. Get rich. Have money. At the office. It had been a while since Goth had properly taken a moment to think about all the changes that were being implemented around her. The Zebra worked tirelessly as a civil servant, filing paperwork day in and day out, just to try and make ends meet at home. But things had become rather odd as of late. For one, the National Guard had recently become responsible for transporting her documents around and making sure they found the right creatures. Of course, they were seemingly doing a fine job of it, but the question remained as to why the civil servants around her were no longer responsible for them. It wasn't as though they had just had a big workplace turnover, at least to her knowledge anyway. Perhaps they just needed more security. With that said, something else that had been rather strange was the meeting with her boss just the day before. That pony was a fairly heavy drinker, but she'd never seen him utterly pissed at work before. Goth had to assume that she was simply stressed, which was understandable given that they had seemed to be beset on all sides by hostile states, but that behavior from him, however sensible she could make it, was still unexpected. The Zebra stamped another document inside. Perhaps she was simply imagining things. 3 hurrahs for Tobuck! A little glimmer of hope, no matter how far off the end goal is, or how misplaced that hope may be, is still something that can be utilized for the benefit of our little operation. The people must believe in the Republic to make the most of the state structure it provides, and so they shall, however briefly. Yay! Sell more guns! What's so complicated about this? Just keep selling guns. Make me money. Sell the guns. Erstwhile partner. Vasil, a griffin is capable of holding a genuine conversation with someone as he is with rubbing any poor creature blind on the spot. Robbing. He would do well to reaffirm our ties with him, as he has other plans for this city, though he knows little of it. Perhaps he may even help us unknowingly. Vasil. Vasili. Simultaneously the most kind individual and the creature closest to the Tartars that Peashooter had ever met. They were good friends despite themselves. In fact, it was likely their similar approach to things that made them so disinclined to dislike one another. He had come all the way from Prywin to escape the Civil War and make his way, which had led to the pair of them deciding quickly to collaborate once they had realized their capacity to further expand upon their ill-gotten gains. Of the other creatures in Tobuck, Vasil was closest to knowing the foreign minister's true intentions, but he remained unaware of his friend's careful game that was unfolding in the background. P! How nice it is to see you again. Did you miss me? The griffin offered with a haunting laugh as he sauntered into the office. The Earthbony allowed himself a similarly warm laugh and got up from his desk, trotting over to give the portly bird a pleasant hug. The feeling is mutual, and though I must admit that I do miss your energetic entrances, I finally have a task for you. Oh? Vasil returned, feigning surprise before laughing again as they went to sit down. Well, I'm sure that I can do whatever it is you require. After all, I still owe you a favor or two. Peashooter had long since forgotten where his favors with Vasil had originated, but he had always made sure to keep them in his back pocket until just the right moment. Now as the plans were proceeding, and with the looming deadline from Mekazay, it was about time to cash them in. I'm afraid I must ask you to work some of your magic regarding certain state documents, he answered earnestly, wanting to lie as little as possible to someone he considered a friend. There are some rather significant numbers that need fudging. You understand? The Griffin couldn't help but smile, eagerly to get his claws dirty. Oh, is it my birthday? You shouldn't have. I had a feeling you'd enjoy that. Unlock decision to have the Vasil disorganize government papers. It can be found in bits and guns category. Gain 10 million unfiltered. Yeah, money. Money. Give me money. I get money. Their payday. After thoroughly touching base with every pony that props up our make-believe democracy, it's time for them to reap the benefits of their loyalty. After all, we want it to be pretty clear that allegiance is an investment that pays dividends. Yeah, they deserve some money too. Sell more guns! Excuse me. Let's go ahead and lower that. Peace and prosperity. Hey, take it easy. Gigglejuice recently came to us with an idea for giving a speech on coexistence and cooperation with Zaratinas, even suggesting that we invite their tribal leader if she's interested. Let us arrange for this plan of his to go forward. Even if our neighbors don't accept, our people will appreciate the gesture. Yes, they will. Sell more guns! Anyways. Just want to wait on that, and then I can start looting my popularity. I just want to get his... A hoof in the door. To my sweetheart across the sea. I must first apologize for not writing sooner, but I have been incredibly busy trying to get things together out here in Zebrica. I mean not to make excuses, only to say sorry and explain my silence. I know you will understand that at the very least, the nation I have established myself in is a little city-state called Tobuck, on the innermost part of a bay, and before you fret, I have found myself safe and in good hooves with a number of friends already. Of particular interest to you would be my small in contrast to what I hope to achieve here, but nonetheless substantial stock of money that I have accrued. Tobuck is neither a particularly rich or poor nation, but it can supply our family to a totally sufficient standard. I hope that over the coming year or so, I can make you truly proud of my earnings. Should I return home before my intended date of departure, the money that I've made already could just about keep us sane in our retirement and pay for the fowls and tuition. We could possibly splash out on one or two of items, but as it stands, we would likely need to continue working for several years after I return home. It is my intention, though, and not a practical certainty, to continue accumulating wealth at a steady pace. I want our family to live in comfort, not just security. In closing, I hope that you forgive me for my relative silence. It was not my intention to frighten you. I've just been working hard for you and the Fulls. I know you understand, even if it takes you a little while for your heart to slow down. As a small favor, please make double sure that our little ones aren't staying up too late for me. I know they will like to watch the stars at night sometimes, but a good night's sleep is sometimes more important than a day's work. I miss them both so much. All my love, P. Peashooter's fate has changed. Whatever that means. What do you mean by his fate has changed? That kind of sounds sus. Gun. Gun. Give me political power. Now I will do this. Hey, take it easy. Giggle sighed and took a swing out of his hip flask, standing calmly behind the front of the doors to the Capitol building. The president knew that outside there would be reporters waiting to see what had been done about the Zaratine question. He knew that there would probably be some minor protests as well, and he most certainly knew what his job was. It was time to command a presence in front of the public. As soon as I had pushed open the door, several ponies managed to squeeze past the National Guard regiment that was holding the fort. Hey, what's all this about? I'm not going anywhere, am I? Take it easy, all of you. Needless to say that almost immediately the reporters that had pushed through began asking questions as Gigglejuice descended the Capitol steps. How are you handling Mekazuya? Is the government working towards reconciliation with Zaratine? Is reintegration still on the table? Once he has descended the rest of the distance, the white-haired pony cleared his throat. Well, before we go on, I'd just like to thank you all for coming out to see me today. It's very sweet of you. I'm going to stick around and answer some questions, which should put your many minds at ease. Yes, of course we are cooperating with the tribes, and yes, we're doing our best to make sure reapproachment goes smoothly. Anything else? Almost immediately, he was bombarded with a litany of new questions about the hows and the whys and the whos of it all. He could barely make out what any pony was saying beyond the very basic parts of the sentences. This was going to be a long afternoon. Yeah, it will. Our payday. Now we're getting to what matters. The rules have been set, the sellers regulated, and the offshore accounts maintained. We're fit to rack in cash for as long as our supply lasts. Come Tartarus or high water. Guns! Guns? Guns! Guns! Where'd guns go? Where'd guns go? I sell all guns, but need sell more guns. Get more guns now. The gun pile will refresh 5 guns. Need guns. To each their gun. A free market is good for business, but there is a little thing as it being too free. With a little bookkeeping and regulation, we can ensure that only loyal license and captains are shipping our guns around, and that none of them are sold to local warlords that could try to muscle in on the trade. Who cares? Guns! 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 Magic! Cut down on competitors. Money and guns? Yeah. Money and lose guns? Yes. The first rule. First rule is to never get shot with your own merchandise. Sell it unloaded. Sell it to people way out of killing range. Walnut Drive is a true oddball compared to the other warlords, someone who seems to find new ways to break guns and expend ammunition. Guns. Guns. Or money. Money, guns. Money. Gunnies. Stability. Guns. Money, lose guns. Perfect. Third rule. The third rule is always ensure you have a foolproof way of getting paid, preferably in advance. If you don't have a guaranteed way to get your cash in the end, a deal isn't worth it. Elisa is a good mare and careful with her goods, but give her a good deal and she'll make a good business partner. Our vaults begin to fill. To my sweet, to my, to my sweetheart across the sea. I didn't expect to write again so soon, and I expect that you won't expect another letter from me so soon either. But I felt I should talk to you in the best way I can manage. Fortunately, there is no telegram from Tobuck to Equestria just yet. But correspondence by letter shall suffice for now. Surprisingly, courier services from here around Her Majesty's Christendom are very efficient. But I vastly digress. The reason for this correspondence is largely financial, as our accounts have begun to steadily fill with time and effort. If I were to return home now, we would never have to work a day in our lives again, though we might struggle a little if we planned to move somewhere nicer. I know there's something you'd like, particularly for our little ones, and I want it for them too. I can't stop now when their future could be so much brighter. Whilst I write, I realize that I have explained very little as of yet, and so I'll paint a picture of my surroundings for you. Tobuck is a republic, small but stable, and slowly growing. The view of the sea is something you would see on the postcards back home. If I can, I'll try to bring back some paintings for you all as presents. That and whatever trinkets I can spare the time to buy. To the north is an ancient kingdom of rivers and jungles, whilst to our east is a collection of tribes and other zebras, making a life for themselves in the scorching desert. I suspect that they will attempt to take the city for themselves at some point in the future, but I assure you that I am not in any danger. When you serve as a special weekend pudding next, can you make it just a little larger than normal for the little ones? I still miss them, and I miss you too. You won't have to wait too much longer, I promise. All my love, P. Pea-shooter's fate has changed yet again. Money. Money, 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 money. Warehouse census. Meadows inspected the paperwork that he'd been hoofed and raised an eyebrow at some of the numbers. It seems as the stock of firearms were dwindling, and fast, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but it was certainly problematic. After all, how would the state sell off the surplus if there was no surplus to sell in the first place? He reached for a pencil and began writing a note addressed to the foreign minister. Half gone already? Well, then it seems we've got our work cut out for us. I suppose we'll be needing to find some more weapons and fudge the numbers a little, won't we? See what we can get away with for P's sake. You can do that for me, can't you? Torn Ledger nodded and grinned, taking the note from his boss once he had written it. I could do it in my sleep, sir. I'll make sure the outgoing shipments are packaged just a little more deliberately to try and slow things down and put together some teams to make things work. I have a month left. If I'm halfway through, I'll be fine, but okay, go for it. Tartarus, if I ain't glad I hired you. Just watch out for yourself, yeah? Wouldn't want anything happen to my best warehouse manager over some state scheme. The overseas added with a haunchy laugh. The pony of the pair nodded with a grin and left the zebra to his own devices. Truth be told, he had already been doing some of those things already. But if there's one thing that makes a boss happy, it's fulfilling a promise. He would certainly need to make things a little more efficient. But that was an immediate issue. He just had to make sure that the stocks of guns didn't run out. At least the foreign minister came bearing down on all of them. No punny wanted to draw his ire. Okay, I need just a little more time, so I'll have to do that. Darn it, I could have just waited to praise the warlords. I didn't realize that was gonna show up in one moment. Checking the supply. Given how messy things currently are in the weapon selling department, we would do well to streamline the process somewhat. With a little estimation on our part, a few approximations from the warehouse workers, and a healthy dose of paperwork, it should become much easier to maintain and utilize the stores. I can't. Okay, how much time do I... Okay, this will take 20 days. I don't have 20 days. Oh well. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna matter either, because I don't have time for that. Yeah, I don't have time for anything. Okay. Now, we are gonna be going into whatever's next. But first, I'm gonna save real quick. I'll be right back. You'll understand why in a moment. And we're back. So what I want to do, I will load the save. This does not matter, okay? Let's look at some of these other things that I'm not going to get to see, like these events. What are they? And I'll load and show you the other events as well. I just want to be able to look at everything and see what we're missing on stuff that I didn't get to. Walnut Drive is not the smartest bat, but he has a way of showing up just when you don't need him to. If given the right incentives, will cause enough chaos and confusion on his own that the others won't realize the game until it's already up. Pea-shooter sat at his side desk in the presidential office, awaiting the arrival of his newest business partner. Relying on the warlords had always been a part of the plan, but as a result of recent events, he had decided quickly that the prudent course of action would be to pick a favorite in order to sideline the others. Causing infighting in the military was certainly dangerous, but it might save his flank in a pinch, especially if the other warlords became suspicious. Well, if it ain't my generous benefactor, the familiar voice of Walnut Drive chimed out as he entered the room, smile as wide as it could be. In spite of the typical seriousness, even P wasn't immune to the fresh charisma. It's good to see you too, Walnut. You returned with a slight chuckle. Given your presence, I am to assume that my proposal has piqued your interest enough to warrant further cooperation. The guest approached his desk, and instead of taking a seat in the normal fashion, he turned the chair around and sat resting his hooves on its back. Truly, Walnut was an odd individual, but no less interesting or personable for the many intricals of his character. Well, I ain't one to pass up funds for my folks on the front. They deserve more than I can give them as it stands. So here I am for you, he admitted happily, entirely unaware of the foreign minister's intention. I'm glad to hear that, P returned with a almost tragically genuine smile. Do make sure you send your dutiful soldiers my regards alongside whatever you decide to buy with the money, won't you? The Terrestrial grinned. It'll be the first thing I do, and give 'em my love to bags and all. When you get the chance for me, I almost feel bad that they ain't getting a cut out of this. Walnut almost managed to pull on his heartstreak. Walnut Drive is now the dominant warlord. Okay, I'm assuming this might be how you get warlords to take over, which is not my plan, so I'm glad I didn't go down these. But, anyways, be back in a moment, and we'll check out a different one of the paths. And we are back. Enabled it again. The Exiled Royal. Branson sees Tobuck is just a stepping stone to further conquest. Let him think that way. We'll give him some extra guns and tell him the other warlords are working to muscle in on his territory. And we'll keep them off his backs. The Lord of None. Pea-shooter sat at his side desk in the presidential office, awaiting the arrival of his newest business partner. Relying on the warlords had always been a part of the plan, but as a result of recent events, he had decided quickly that the prudent course of action would be to pick a favorite in order to sideline the others, causing yeah, that part we've already read. Having pointedly swung open the door and marched into the office with a regular expression of superiority plastered across his face. Good morning, Minister. The same to you, my friend. How are things? The earth pony asked, gesturing to the seat in front of the desk with Hoof. Oh, nothing to turn one's snout up at, nor anything to particularly entice. I must say, I was rather surprised by my selection, given that our relationship is almost entirely professional. Quite unlike your fondness for my colleagues, the zebra admitted, taking a seat at the desk and raising an eyebrow in curiosity. P nodded and leaned into the desk with a severe expression. And that is precisely why I've offered you this alternation to our arrangement. To be frank, they may have been more influence over state affairs than I at first realized, and I require you to keep them in check as an exterior moderator. I cannot allow my personal affection to cloud my judgment on state affairs. The foreign minister was, needless to say, lying through his teeth in saying this as much, but he was intelligent enough to know that he could get away with it. When it came to Bergzin, after all, how could he know that such a misjudgment was uncharacteristic? This is commendable course. This is commendable course of action, Minister Shooter. I can only accept the alteration of our arrangement and shall send you the finest bottle of champagne for your generosity. The Zero returned with a smug grin, as easy as he had expected it to be. And that's that one. We'll be back for the last one. And we're back. And the third one. The White Severin. Alicia is drugged and determined, but thinks linearly. If we hoof her some extra troops and tell her to fortify the border, she'll be too busy scrumptiously digging trenches to snoop around. The Reactionary. Pea-Shooter sat at his desk in the presidential offer, awaiting the In his typical severe tone, he sauntered jerkfully into the room with a slight smile on her face. Good morning, Minister Shooter. You're well, I hope. Well indeed, though in need of some minor assistance, as I'm sure you have gathered by now. How is our talented today? He returned perfectly, pronouncing the name of her homeland as though it were his own. The Earth Pony continued over to his desk and sat attentively, though with a surprising lax expression on her face. She had a lot of respect for the civil servants, despite her general attitude towards Republican governments, something that Peacher was willing, though not happened, to take advantage of. I must admit that I'm becoming rather concerned over the sparse numbers of letters from family that I have received thus far this year, but otherwise I am perfectly well. Having trouble with Walnut and Bergeson, I gather. She inquisitive as always, but just aware enough to be entirely a unwitting pawn. The foreign minister chuckled and nodded, as if admitting a fault. Yes, one could certainly say that. Truth be told, the offer to increase your funding is primarily to ensure that two friends stay in line, and you are by far the most reliable of my options in the military department. Alicia mulled over his words carefully, seeming searching for an ulterior motive, but finding none. It would be my pleasure, Minister Shooter. He was still one step ahead for now. And I also just want to desperate times call for desperate measures, so that the media says at least the warlords have been encouraged to launch an operation against Terra, working off entirely falsified reports of weak border presence there. Knowing their drive for loot, they'll likely commit fully to the attack and need to reoperate afterwards. Tobuckian standoff. We're in position now that we can encourage the warlords to fight one another, if only to give us a little more time. P has dirt on all three of the big Equans, and it should be just enough to get them into a scuffle. We'll just have to make sure that they don't start sniffing around once the damage is done. The ample use of statistics we can actually get in the business is all the hard work. Oh, I should have done this. That's 15 million unfiltered money. And this is overseas money. Ugh, I should have gone through this area more. Oh well, too late. One of the most important things an arms dealer maintaining is his reputation. Sell defective arms to a customer one too many times, and you may as well get yourself out of the job. On the other hand, certain firearms are precisely hunted for their quality whenever exceptional or historical. It'll be a waste to sell them off to a common buyer and leave a wealthy patron miffed. Arms trafficking is the bread and butter of Tobuck. It's why the government was founded, how it's funded, and why its leaders even care, and ultimately the glue that binds Tobuckian society together. On top of all that, it makes us extremely rich. One of the most important parts of Tobuck gun trade is offshore bank accounts. Tobuck is not a state with a stable economy. Storing our accumulated wealth in local banks is just asking for it to be lost with the next financial crisis, which is why it's so important to regularly meet with overseas bankers to maintain foreign accounts. And give me more, I presume. A delivery Pegasus asked as they took a slow glide down from the floor of the office with an immense package strapped to his back. The unicorn in question, white-haired and clad in the most extensive suit a new Marylander could buy, looked up at our guest and smiled. The very one. You must be associated with our anonymous friend spoke of, correct? Her guest nodded and took a seat at the executive desk, smiling at the winged stallion sat. I am indeed. They send their regards from overseas. We had heard that Her Majesty's colony was a fine place to do business with good ponies. At that, both parties smiled, and Gibney gestured vaguely for a guest to hoof over his package. Silently, the Pegasus acquiesced to his demand, and put the box of brown paper on the table in order to present the pony with her bribe. After all, you couldn't simply launder money in this day and age. It was a delicate affair that took a lot of effort, and additional fees for individuals in the right places that were willing to help for a price. The unicorn used her magic to pry apart the paper and inspect the money that had been stored inside. It was all here, not in bits of course, but certainly in a currency that she could turn into bits as she saw fit. Pea-shooter's associate, though his host knew not of his name, gave her a warm smile as she returned the money to what was now a simple paper bag rather than a package. Everything is in order, then. Our benefactor may transfer the money freely through my hooves, and I will do my utmost to ensure that all possible complications are avoided, Gibney answered, resting her hooves on the table. The Pegasus nodded and stood up and turned about to leave. A pleasure doing business with you, madame. Everything was in order. Streamlined procurement. To be blunt, we need to speed things up a little. What we have in place works, but it doesn't work nearly well enough to last. Though it will pain the coffers to do so, it's important that we increase the number of working personnel and the work on the weapon stockpile and begin managing the warehouse so that we keep them in. And then I'm going to let a day pass just get some event fires. Okay. Goodbye and thanks for the bets. We finished up earlier than expected, much to the imminent delight of that tribal queen. Well, better off whilst the going's good, as they say. There's no point in delaying our stay in Tobuck further than necessary. The climate was far from enjoyable, and the politics will not be missed. Oh. And here's what happens if... Okay, I clicked on stuff way too fast, and I'm gonna reload and just show off that one event because I accidentally clicked. Whoops. And we are back. Departure. Pea-shooter stood by a radio on the deck of the boat that he and Ben Counter had purchased many months ago, listening to the dress that he had asked Maines to prepare. It was a quick affair, a little more than an alert to let the Tobuckians know that the tribes would shortly swoop in and reintegrate the city. Of course, the foreign minister was not mentioned once in the proceedings, nor were his associates. He assumed that the place would be a little chaotic for a while, but that they'd get things sorted out all the same. Luckily, it wasn't his problem anymore. "Hey, how's the speech?" Bean's familiar voice chimed out over the largely quiet sea as he climbed the steps of the deck with a bottle of champagne. He turned slowly about and switched off the radio, leaning on the railings. "Nothing special. With a little luck, Means will make sure everything goes smoothly. And if he doesn't, then Mikazel certainly will." The less severe of the two ponies laughed, setting down the bottle by the radio and pouring them both a drink. "No kidding. If you were still there by now, I imagine she would subject you to more than just a vague threats. I'm surprised that she even..." The ex-civil servant winced as his pistol cracked the pristine calm of the evening air, looking away as the suddenly lifeless body of his old friend stood stock still just for a moment. The champagne bottle shattered on the deck, followed by a loud thunk as Bean's corpse fell to the planks amid the final conclusion of his plans. He just knew too much. Minutes passed as P attempted to rationalize his actions, knowing that he had chosen personal security over the life of a good friend. Tying weights to the hooves of the body and pushing what remained of that friend overboard certainly didn't help. He was finally free of the accused republic, free to return home and to see his family, free from doubt and from shackles of poverty. Tossing the pistol into the sea, the remaining earth pony hoped that one day he could forgive himself. He hoped that the smiles of the family could absolve his actions. Well, geesh! He hoped that it had been worth it. A job well done. You know, I wanted to come back with more than this, Pea-shooter admitted quietly, having taken a swing of expensive whiskey. Mayflower Bed turned to look at his husband, apparently surprised. "You thought you could bring in back more, did you? After paying off the debt my father left us, and then paying for their tuition, you still wish you could go back and try again." As they sat beside one another on the sofa, they turned to watch their foals playing in the new toys that P had given them. They were happy and secure in their lives and future now, but their father still wished he could have given them more for being away for so long. He'd missed so much of their foalhood already, just to give them all a chance. He sighed and cuddled up against his wife's coat, frowning just a tad. Maybe. I mean, I'm happier, they're happier, and I hope you're happier too. But I feel as though I could have done more in the time I spent away. I could have gotten them a better school. We could have moved house. Maybe I could have earned enough so that we didn't have to work. She nodded and wrapped the hood around her husband's barrel, occasionally glancing at Acacia and Poppy to make sure they weren't doing anything overly silly. You could have, but you're home now, and we are happier for what you did. Whether you could have earned more money or not, our little ones have a shot to get the big leagues now, and we can retire before most for your hard work. We're free to live our lives because of you. They both sat silently for a while as P thought to himself, mulling over his own feelings. He really had done a lot. Enough, perhaps. Whether he had done the best he could have or otherwise. I love you, May. You know that? Aww. Meanwhile, back in Tobuck, Zaratine sweeps in. With Peashooter plans having come to fruition, the perfect storm he had envisioned came to fruition. The tribes now swept in to retake their rightful territories, whilst the establishment in Tobuck barely had a moment to collect themselves, being forced to submit to the will of the Desert Queen. After all, the foreign minister had timed his arrangement to a T. There was no way to halt the Zaratines now, and most didn't want so, too, in any case. The National Guard was never given the orders to stand and fight. The citizens of the Republic welcomed their old friends as liberators, and politicians had little choice but to accept an annexation. Speeches were made, citizens were allowed to stay or to leave as they saw fit, but no fighting was to occur. The less blamed plans of the desert rats had gone off without a hitch, leaving whoever was left to pick up the pieces. But as the Republic of Tobuck was left to the annals of history, the Equestria and her people had righted a great wrong in the history of their nation. As the Equestrians left to return to his home, and the native Zaratines began a story of their own, working to build a new history upon the shameful deal that Peashooter had created for them to endure. For one, it was the end. For others, it was a new beginning. And now we could just become them, wait for a few days to the year's up, and he, as promised, have your city back. I've endeavored to keep it in decent enough condition, though I can't vouch for my associates. I thank you for your civility in the past year and wish you luck in the future endeavors. As a side note, your gift is much appreciated and will come in handy. And yeah, you get extreme corruption and warlord remnants, which is great. The mercenaries that serve Peashooter still litter their region, and they need to be dealt with immediately. And in the wake of Gunrunner's operation, Tobuck has been left a city ruled by corruption. But you now have a new focus tree, and I assume that it might continue once you hit the bottom here. So yeah, you actually get a new focus tree that's different from the ordinary one, but you have to start as them to get it, or you have to make sure they go straight down that path. That's probably a thing you can force them to do in whatever it's called. But yeah, we're not gonna be playing Zaratine. But we'll be going back to the save that I had, and we'll be not going through this path, and we'll be continuing on throughout with our next leader back in the nation of Tobuck in the next episode. If you enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button, and as always, peace.